as exactly. Okay, at the same time, fuck it. We'll be hopping around a bit, but let me talk about the kids, because they're the main plot. There's this funeral, obviously, for the kid.
For Will.
For Will. And at it, or
it's
around
a great moment, I think. What you're going to bring up is a great moment, but go ahead.
They ask the science teacher, Mr. Clark, about dimensions, and... Was that what you were thinking of?
I'm sorry. I just love that they were, like, laughing at the funeral.
Oh, yeah, that was great, too. Wait till we tell him that this kid cried at his funeral. And I love how they say, like, her full name, first and last name.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but that is how you do it
Yeah.
when there's some hot chick crying at your friend's funeral. And you're like, I can't believe she's crying for him.
And since you're bringing up is their science teacher, or was it their AV teacher? Who was that guy? Or is their chemistry teacher or something?
Well, the mustache science guy.
Mr. Clark.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Clark. My notes do say Mr. Clark rules. What a great character that they used perfectly, where he was sprinkled in here and there throughout the show, and he was always funny and entertaining when he popped up.
Yeah, and he makes so much sense, and I do love how they bring up the Veil of Shadows, and he's like, yeah, of course, the Dark Dimension. Like, he knows. So, yeah, they talk to him and find out about dimensions and stuff and realize... from what he says that eventually they put together the compasses should be pointing to the gate. So they set out to find this gate to the other world and to Will, but Elle is afraid and disrupts the search, causing a fight between Mike and Lucas, which ends with Elle throwing Lucas all over the place and fucking him up, and he storms off, and Elle also vanishes.
With this episode, I like how they show Dustin being the one that figures it out and kind of is like, you idiots, do you not understand? I like how they use Dustin in this episode. Lucas, unfortunately, gets the shorter end of the stick because he has to be the contrarian. Of course, we as the audience, knowing and liking what's going on, we don't like him because of it. The kid does well enough with what he has, but it's unfortunate that they have to make him kind of the shitty one in a way, just to kind of do the old like breaking up of the squad.
Yeah, that's true. But in the same way that I sometimes look at the white-haired scientist guy, and my perverted mind is like, well, we gotta beat the Ruskies somehow. Like, maybe we need to steal some electromagnetic children or something. Like, in the same way, I'm not on Lucas's side, but I totally see his point of view.
Sure.
And so I don't really, I'm sort of fine with him. But as you said, I like that Dustin gets he gets more room to shine later in the season, because he's mostly comic relief early on, and then it's like, oh, wait, you guys are idiots. I'm the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gets even more of that as the episode goes on. Side plot, Will's dad comes around, but it turns out he's only interested in suing for cash. So.
Yeah, my note on that is there's always a scumbag dad. There always has to be a scumbag dad.
Very true. So he gets thrown out, and I don't know. My notes aren't super specific, so let me talk about the teen storyline. Now, this is where Jonathan and Nancy really team up, and they go searching for monsters in the woods and get to know each other a little better. And then Nancy sees a hole in a tree, decides, hey, this creepy, slimy hole, better crawl through it.
Yeah, I have a note that just says, don't go in the scary tree. Please, why would you go in there?
At least find your friend first. The scientists had a rope when they went through. Do a rope. I know it didn't work, but you could do something.
Although I guess this is after, because I did make a note, he completely burns Nancy. Because he really burns her. Like, I was impressed with the level of burn. Because basically, in a previous episode, or it might even been the same episode, she talks about her parents, and it's the standard suburban kid story of my parents are just together because they think they should be, and we seem like we have the perfect happy home, but beneath the surface, it's far from perfect. And, that's clearly a vulnerability, a thing she's very concerned with. And it's the old, I don't want to be my parents when I get older. And then the brother completely just hits her with, here you are thinking you're being a rebel by hanging out with the popular cool guy, and you're just going to end up just like your parents.
Yeah. And it's hard not to love how she is sort of egging him on and going like, well, you don't, Steve's cool, so you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I know I feel just misogynist just pointing it out, but it is still nice the way he defers to her completely and goes, yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's keep with the mission. But he gets pushed too far, and then he releases the sickest bird of the century and stomps off.
Oh yeah, you're right, because she keeps egging him on. Because he's really just saying, that's fine. I don't have to like him. I don't. And clearly, why would he like him? The guy smashed his camera, and there's definitely a hint that he's, this isn't the first time he's bullied him. You know what I mean? This kid is thought of as a weirdo. Basically, because even when they're like goofing on him in an early episode because he's putting up missing posters of his,
which is
brother.
Pretty fucked. Like, that's not the time.
Oh, and one other thing I don't think I brought up, and this is more of a general thing. Winona Ryder is turning into old Winona Ryder from Edward Scissorhands because she has old Winona Ryder voice, and I don't think she's putting it on. I think it's just she's old Winona Ryder now.
Yeah, I mean, that is how it works. I don't remember that part, to be honest. I saw your tweets on the subject, but I don't remember the old voice. But I assume it's this voice. That is, like, that's fascinating to see, like, when people are putting old makeup and then they grow older and you see, how accurate was it?
Oh, yeah, like Back to the Future.
Yeah, but seeing old Marty run around playing his guitar still. The days, they go by so fast. What else happens in this episode? Yeah, she goes through the tree portal and it closes up. I think that's it. My notes on this episode was just so much cool stuff in this show.
Yeah.
And the Upside Down, that's just a great name because there's so many like darkness dimension stuff, and I'm sure maybe it's been used before or whatever, but it just feels distinct and iconic.
Yes, I like that because they said the Veil of Shadows, and most things would probably just have stuck with that. And have just stuck with the D&D reference, and they would have constantly been referring to it as the Veil of Shadows. But I agree. It just it does feel like it's kind of a great calling card for the show that they came up with their own thing, their own name for it. And then when the adults are calling it like the Upside Down and stuff, it just really works.
Yeah. So we'll move on to Chapter 6, The Monster. So Jonathan pulls Nancy back, gets her back from the Upside Down, and they go to her place where he stays overnight.
Yeah, but one note I had on that is it's one of those convenient things where I just put, that tree dimension got resolved quickly because basically once he pulls her out, it just closes up. Because I'm thinking like, oh, here we go. We got our gateway. We don't need to get into the lab. We go in through the tree. But then I guess it just assumed that this monster can make its own little gateways wherever it needs to get back into the main dimension. And I guess one thing, no, I'll bring it up in a later episode. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess they explain it later how it works, but I certainly felt when she went through, I'll admit I did not think she was going to come back right away, and it doesn't feel like a cop-out, but it probably would have worked if she was in the darkness dimension as well, because then everyone would be coming to the brother, Jonathan, and be like, be saying like, oh, you did something to her, and then that would put him with the chief, and then they would team up, and like it could have gone that way, but it doesn't. He pulls her out and stays over at her house. Steve climbs up the window and sees them together in the room.
And my note is Steve Harrington will not go away, and he's going to do something bad. Now I may have been wrong on that, but that was my feeling at the time. Yeah,
I certainly understand it, and I from that interview I skimmed through, I did get the impression that the Duffer Brothers had a Jim Scampoli view of him until they cast him, and then the performance was just it added more flavor and more feeling to the character, and I don't know if they reacted to that and softened him up a bit or what, but it certainly could have gone that things go darker, super dark from there on for Steve, but yeah. So the next day, they're stocking up on monster hunting equipment, and the culmination is that there's some slut-shaming graffiti.
Yeah, my note is Steve Harrington's a slut-shamer.
And a fight breaks out with Steve, which ends with Jonathan getting arrested. That's the teen storyline.
Yes, yeah. And then the adults, this is when the adults do some research into the other missing kid who was presumably Elle, and they find the mother. That's in this episode, correct?
Yeah, I actually, it also says here that he wakes up with his house bugged, so I may have gotten it jumbled that maybe this is the episode where that happens as well. But either way, he goes to Joyce, the mother, and tells her, hey, guess what? My bad. You were right all along.
Oh, and this is when he takes all her light bulbs out, and she has a lot of them because of the Christmas lights.
Which, I mean, when he goes in there and the camera goes over the place, and he's like, holy shit, because he has to unscrew the light bulbs. That's funny, but I thought they were panning to the bigger lamp at the center because it was the same type of lamp where he found his, but yeah. Anyway, they go to investigate.
And also, why not just go outside somewhere and have
I
your
did wonder about
discussion?
that because, well, these satellites, they're getting strong.
You never know.
So what do? Yeah, they go and find this woman who claims that the CIA stole her super baby.
Yeah, this is kind of where they try to, and I like that they didn't hit on it too much because one thing, and maybe it's just because we have so much content now, as far as movies, TV shows, and all that. I mean, one thing in the 80s especially, I mean, that's what I grew up with for the most part, so I base it on that and what this is based off. A lot of times they didn't even bother really trying to explain where something came from. Yeah. It would just be, this person's got powers, moving on. This movie gives kind of a small explanation. It's not the greatest, but they don't really hammer it out too much because it has to do with she was pregnant and doing LSD and being in these what are they called again?
Sensory deprivation tanks.
The sensory deprivation tanks, and it somehow like affected and made her a super baby. Apparently, I'm not sure.
Speaking of like origins and stuff, I certainly maybe it's because of like all the intertextuality, as we call it. It's relating to all these other pieces of media, but I never felt like, we need to. But where did Elle come from? Well, of course, we need a little bit on that, like why she's physically in the lab, but why she has powers. I never even would have questioned that if she just had them,
Yeah. So, I mean, they kind of throw something out there. They don't go too into detail, but yeah, everything today, you usually have to spend all this time spelling out where something came from. And in some cases, it's definitely warranted, depending on how you're able to pull it off. I like that they didn't go too much into it. They just kind of hinted at it a little bit. And basically, Elle's mother now is kind of in a weird catatonic state. No one believed her. I like how I was waiting for something to happen later on with this sister who was just kind of goofing on her sister, because her sister's like her caretaker. Like, don't bother talking to her. She's a weirdo idiot. She had a miscarriage. There's no baby out there, and she couldn't be more wrong. But she's so happy with how right she is. So I almost wanted to see her get some sort of comeuppance and feel like the piece of shit she is. Well, she's taking care of her, so it's the little things in life you can enjoy when you're stuck doing that all day. That's true. But I thought that scene with her, I guess Elle's aunt, was kind of weird. Just how they cut it. Like, when she's explaining, like, she thinks the baby has, like, ESP or some shit, and then they cut to Elle doing ESP or some shit. Okay. And it seemed like just short flashes, so in the sort of way where it seemed like they would be showing memories. Like, if one of those had seen Elle do something, and then she describes it, and then we see these flashes, like, that's what I expected that to be. Okay. But since no one in the scene had hung out with Elle ever, I was wondering why they were cutting in showing Elle doing stuff, because it felt a bit like talking down to the audience and saying, like, do you get it? She's talking about Elle. You're right. I forgot that they did that. I didn't make a note of that. But yeah, you're right. That and in this scene also, there's another thing I didn't like. But yeah, I don't like when they feel like they have to spell it out, especially because it's a Netflix show. It's not like we saw these episodes a month ago and we're like, oh yeah, that's right. It's like, no, we just watched that like an hour ago. And this is also the episode where she even says, you ever read Stephen King? And that's right. It was the only homage / reference call out in this whole series that I felt like, nah, come on. That was the one where I was like, you don't have to do that. That was too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a bit like they would have said, "What is this, fucking E.T.?" when they're taking care of the kid because it's so close. Don't do that. Like, do Lando Calrissian because it's not that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could totally see that. But yeah, on the other hand, I was sort of wondering if they decided to do that in post, because if they did, do they think we're that stupid, or it could just be that the scene didn't work? It was too boring or something.
Oh yeah, and they're just trying to make it feel a little different.
But it felt like they were cutting it like it was a revelation, and it's like, no, we get it. Like, we knew this was Elle's aunt all along. So
what was the name of this episode again?
It was The Monster, because if I can tell you what happens with the kids real quick.
Yeah.
Lucas goes and search. They're still fighting the kids, so Lucas goes on his own to search for this portal, while Mike and Dustin search for Elle. And this ends with a confrontation where the bullies show up and with Mike and Dustin and force Mike to jump off into this quarry or whatever it is. And Elle saves him at the last second and breaks the bully's arm, and then she reveals that Lucas was right when he was accusing her in the last episode. It was she who opened the portal, and she says that she's a monster, and they disagree. So that's why it's called The Monster.
Yeah, because they get into... Do they show her flashback in this episode? I can't remember if that's in this episode or not.
It's like flashbacks in every episode.
Yeah, that's true. Sure. But I mean, like, her specific ones of, like, whatever. I guess it's not that important.
No, well, there are flashbacks. I think there were more flashbacks in the previous episode because they were padding that a bit more, and there was a bit more happening here. She was on her own as well, outside, and stealing food from the store and smashing the door in the face of the clerk who was trying to stop her from walking out with the food and all that. Good stuff. All good stuff.
Sorry, I was just trying to look up who wrote that episode, and
sure.
It was Jesse Nixon Lopez, who was staff writer, and not a strong episode. So take that.
All right.
Take that, you.
Jeez. All right. I didn't really look into it. I'd like to look into who has like directed and written stuff, and I didn't have time to do that. But it seems like a lot of the Duffer brothers are bringing people up with them, rather than, there's not a bunch of huge name directors or co-writers on any of this, as far as I could make out. Yeah,
the only one I saw, who I wonder if maybe is the one who kind of got things going, I believe was the name Sean Levy, because he had worked on like not things that are that great, but like a lot of bigger projects.
Okay.
Like he's a producer on Real Steel, Night at the Museum.
Right.
Yeah, like not not
cool stuff.
Yeah, cool. Not great things. But it's the someone who has the most like history. So I wonder if he's kind of helped get it going. And I think I believe he directed episode 4.
That makes sense. So this was episode 6, and it makes sense for it to be flagging a bit because it's right ahead of the climax bit, because the last two are both like climax. And
getting all the pieces in place, things are starting to come together. And the bullies, the bullies thing that felt very like Stephen King, and seemingly out of nowhere, but a good catalyst for how the team's kind of about to get back together. You know what I mean? Because they're a fractured team. Elle's missing. The other kids already. Lucas is still kind of on his own, right? Yeah, Lucas is on his
Renegade.
own.
Yep.
And they're doing the thing. I mean, I'm sure bullies have done terrible things, but they're doing the thing where the bully gets really over the top.
Gets
where
psycho.
You're like, okay, go jump off this cliff now.
And the other bully's like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I'm not sure, man.
Like always. But haven't you, or no, who did you tell us? No, I don't remember who, but someone was telling a story about chasing someone through the woods with a guy with a knife. Was that from your past?
Yeah, that was from my past, yes.
So it happens. You just didn't catch him in time.
That's true.
What would have gone
And I
then?
was
Because
that kid that was like, "What are we? Wait a minute, what is going
what is
on?"
this? Wait, I didn't sign up. Okay, you're my friend, I guess. So it can happen, but it does feel very Stand By Me and Stephen King-ish. I didn't make a note that this was a bad episode.
No, I'm being a little harsh. Because really, when I say bad episode, it's only because we brought up those two things. And you're right, the editing portion could just as easily have been, and most likely was just done in post, and then the Stephen King reference. So I'm being unfair.
Yeah, and I like the, Jonathan and Nancy monster hunting team is working pretty well, and they have some nice chemistry, and the fight was pretty cool in a messed up way where he fights Steve and all that's good stuff. So let's move on.
It
anyway.
ends with basically the bad guys are coming. They're kind of like gearing up.
Yeah,
now. Like not
right.
the bullies, but the evil scientists kind of know what's up, and they're heading towards our heroes.
Lucas puts the things together, and I like how every character gets, like, they all contribute to, like, the plot. I don't know, not the right way to put it, but they contribute to the teamwork. Like, Lucas is off putting things together and realizing that the people in the white vans are the bad guys.
Yep.
And as you say, it ends with him running to warn his pals, which is what we open on in Chapter 7, The Bathtub.
Nice.
The shortest episode.
One thing I had I know you're about to get into it, but there's a moment where there's like an almost kiss with Elle and Mike. I kind of, but that wasn't really needed. But I mean, I guess I get why they did it, but it was just kind of like, all right, we get it.
Yeah. Do you need to have a scene like that if characters kiss later? Is that mandatory to have an almost kiss before a kiss?
Maybe.
Sometimes I kiss people and it's a surprise to everyone involved. And there's been no foreshadowing. Yeah. Well, maybe some foreshadowing, but not a scene where we're like staring at each other and then someone comes through the door. Yeah, like it's a bit tired. Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, we were just gonna go down on each other.
You caught it at an inopportune moment. I got my pants down and I'm upside down and all the things. Chapter 7, The Bathtub. So the kids are running from the lab people. Elle flips a van, and then they go hide in the junkyard.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think of the chase stuff?
Oh, dude, I loved it. I put more ET goodness. I cannot get enough of kids running away from authorities on their bikes. It's so exciting and so great to me because, there's the clear threat of, hey, these people are in cars. What are you going to do? You're on a bike. It's like, nope, I can go off-road. I can go down these hills. I can go through the alley. I fucking love it. And, I mean, again, to what we were talking about, like when you say the lines before they happen, Elle's going to do a kick-ass thing, but it doesn't ruin the moment. It's still a great moment and a great open for the episode.
Yeah, I like to come into new shows blind, so I didn't even watch the trailer. In the trailer, I think because I watched it afterwards, and they do show like the car flips. So
that's right, they do, don't they? I didn't remember it at the time, but yeah, now that you bring it up, they did show it in the trailer.
Cool. So for me, it was like, oh, even better. But yeah, you do expect it because I had a note on this later. But what the fuck are these lab people like? Do they not realize that they're going after a super weapon? Like, do they not have any contingency plan? Do they not have a single guy with a sniper with a tranquilizer?
Yeah.
So they could save 10 people's lives or however many gets slaughtered.
And that becomes even more apparent in, I believe, the next episode. But we'll get to that.
Exactly, that's where I wrote that. So everyone teams up in this episode. First off, we have the police station where the teens and the adults meet and share information. So they're now on the same page, and they're trying to find Mike because the adults have learned that they need to find Elle, who they know is with Mike. So together they use the walkie-talkies, get in contact, and go save the kids from the junkyard.
And one thing I really liked about this, and what they probably would have stretched out if this was a show with more episodes, when what's the brother's name again? I keep spacing. Jonathan. Because when Jonathan gets arrested for being in the fight and accidentally hitting a police officer, I totally expect it to be this whole thing now where they got to try to somehow break him out of jail or whatever, and I do think if this was 10, 13 episodes or something, it would be a whole episode where this is the the stopgap to keep everyone from teaming up because Jonathan's in jail and we need to get him out and blah blah blah. But it's just kind of Hooper comes. Well, first the mother comes in and is like, take those handcuffs off him right now, and it's like no, he hit a cop, and then Hooper's just like, take those handcuffs off him.
Yeah,
moving on. We need to get it. We need to move on from this. And it's great. And again, we talk. Obviously, we're doing a TV podcast, so we love serial storytelling, and it's great to have the buildup of all these threads and the satisfaction when things start coming together and everything starts coming to a head.
It's and there are shows where that doesn't happen, and you wait for it, and you wait, and you get a little bit, and maybe something, and here it's like, no, they're all working on the same project from different angles. They're all making different progress, and in this episode, they all come together and realize that they need to build a sensory deprivation tank, of course.
Yeah.
So we get a glimpse of the science teacher or whatever he is, who's watching a movie with some hottie.
Yeah, I love that that was my favorite little detail, was that he was kind of with a hot chick watching a movie. Instead of just doing the typical look at this nerd teacher idiot guy we always call. And there was never really they didn't feel the need to have some dumb joke or explanation about it. It was just no, he's just hanging out with the chicks like he's want to do.
Yeah, he should have been. I mean, he would have been painting World of Warcraft or Warhammer, figurines. But I can't help you, kids.
Yeah.
I'm working on my next campaign.
Yeah, in the middle of his own D&D game with other nerdy guys or something.
That could easily have been the thing.
And they're watching The Thing, aren't they? I think they're watching I think they're watching The Thing, if I remember correctly.
Could easily have been the thing. See what I did?
I like it.
And I like that he is not acting different or anything. He's still you know what that is? That's cornstarch and plastic or whatever. So he's still the same nerdy guy. And, he's acting the same on the phone. And I love Dustin's pitch for, you always say to open any doors to curiosity. Why are you keeping this curiosity door closed? And he's like, he's right.
And that's the great humor of the show too, because it's a show of fantastic sci-fi elements and some genuinely creepy horror and adventure, but it has some really good character humor, which is one of the better throwbacks to these types of movies as well. Because when you watch something, even if you watch Poltergeist, I watched it not too long ago, and Poltergeist, for being a scary movie, it has some silly comedy in it,
right.
and you kind of forget that because everything nowadays has to be grounded in self-serious so much that you forget that you can have fun in things that are creepy or fantastical.
Yeah, it's a lot more moping these days.
Yeah.
Sad boys hanging out, being sad.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it's such an easy way to get you to care about characters and get you invested in the story, just to have a good comedic chemistry underneath it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they find out how to build a tank, and they do it in the school's gym. And Elle goes in and finds out that Barb is fucked, but Will seems to be fine for now.
Yeah.
So, the adults go to break into the lab, but they get caught. And the teens, Jonathan and Nancy, go and steal their monster hunting equipment back.
Yes, yeah. And one note I had when Elle's in the deprivation tank, for the all the stuff with Winona Ryder and Elle, I felt really worked and was really earned. And tying it back to the cook that finds her in the first episode and is being nice to her and trying to take care of her. Again, it's one of these things where I want her to adopt Elle and take care of her because through this whole show and between flashbacks and just the way the characters acting, she never had someone that cared about her and wanted to take care of her, and she never had an adult that wanted to keep her safe. You know what I mean? So I thought it was really effective. They just nailed it. If you get scared, I'm right here. I just remember I got you. I thought they nailed that stuff.
Yeah, and she's clinging to Papa because she doesn't have anything.
Yes.
And she is not even close to this. And it makes sense for all the reasons you say, and also because she has lost Will and is clutching for something similarly to our favorite police officer who has lost his daughter, which is part of his motivation for finding this kid. It just makes sense and works together. She's able to help her through it, and they get the info they need. My only note on this episode is everyone's teaming up. Woo!
Yeah.
Because it was just enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, this is it. The final chapter. Chapter 8. The Upside Down. We start, well, I don't know where we start, but anyway, the adults. Hopper has gotten caught, and the mother, so they make a deal.
That was the one, for Hopper being so, like, badass and smart and, like, ahead of the curve through the whole series. It was weird that she's like, we're just going to cut the fence. He's like, hey, it worked before. And it's like, I know it worked before, but that's probably why it's not going to work again.
It didn't work in a permanent fashion. You did get caught and bugged. But and also, well, how did you feel about him selling out Elle so quickly?
You know what was great about that is he is Lando. So for the Lando jokes that they kept doing where, the kids thought Hopper was selling them out, he became Lando. So I liked it on that respect. It did make sense from a character point because it was more of a greater good thing. Like, it's not like I don't think he cares about Elle, but he knows that Will is, in danger, and it's kind of the only way.
Yeah, I thought it made sense as well, and maybe he's thinking, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but maybe he's thinking they're not going to kill Elle when they find her, so we can save her later or whatever. Like, we got to get Will right now. So they go through the gates. Meanwhile, we have the teens, Jonathan and Nancy. They're setting up their trap in a kind of awesome Home Alone. That's
exactly what I had noted. Home Alone traps, nice touch.
Yeah, with the yo-yos and all the things. Steve shows up and almost fucks it up, but then eventually saves the day. So they do hurt the beast seriously, set it on fire, but it escapes.
And I forget the exact thing they did in episodes. Oh, in episode 7, because I forgot this note, I don't buy it, good guy, Steve Harrington. And I guess that's when he kind of gets almost beat up by his friend. I think, or was that in this episode? No, it's got to be in the episode before, because Steve Harrington starts sticking up for Nancy because his lame friends start calling her a slut and whatever. And then his friend's like, hey, you don't want to step to me. You already got beat up. I'll fucking beat you up again.
Got beat up by a loser, so...
And then he decides to help clean off the spray paint. And I did put, I don't buy it, good guy, Steve Harrington. But in this episode, I had to put, well played, Steve Harrington. Because, and I think you're right, they may have had the idea of him just being the cliche bully, but it was an interesting turn to just have him. No, he helped them. I mean, he was kind of goofy because he didn't know the whole story and the stakes, but he did come back and he kind of had a hero moment for being just the bad guy. And all the best stories, you don't want to have a bully be just a bad guy because. I mean, you don't necessarily want to have some sort of Anakin Skywalker backstory, but you want to have him feel like a real character.
Well, and he's one of the few characters who has no idea what the fuck is going on during any of the show, and he still comes in and quite quickly, he has the same thing where he runs out to the car, just like Winona earlier, but he runs back and saves the day a little bit. I mean, speaking of his character, earlier on, I mean, what did he do to piss you off, Jim? Is it just the little child? Did you have a Steve in your life?
I think we all had a Steve Harrington in our life.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I was probably playing into the trope, and they played it well with the show where they did lay hints that he did legit like Nancy, but you're always waiting for the shoe to drop where it's just the character that pretends he likes her because he wants to get in her pants or whatever. So I think they towed that line really well, and I don't know if necessarily always planned to have him be a good guy in the end, but they left it open enough where it didn't seem phony.
Yeah, and it's hard to have like it's hard to like a character who's as cool as him, and like he's getting all the chicks and having the parties and everyone likes him. So I get that, but at the same time, like the worst thing he did in the early episodes was break the camera, and I think what Jonathan did was probably worse, taking pictures, creepy
Although,
pictures.
I mean, he was goofing on a kid who lost his brother. He was not really taking all that stuff seriously. That a kid, I mean, a given this can all be written off to just dumb kids. Dumb kids don't understand the seriousness of real life problems, and sometimes they will just purposely run away from the seriousness. So I get it, but just that whole thing of being a cool guy and fuck everyone else, even if they're going through terrible things. And but you're right, it's not enough to completely hate him.
But going back to what you said about why have a party when there's a kid missing, I feel like they might have. This was in the previous podcast, but so whatever. But I felt like if a kid goes missing and you're a teen, you don't necessarily feel like you're in danger.
Yes.
Because he could have just biked into the quarry, which is what they then think happened and so on.
Well, I mean, when I was in high school, a kid died in a car accident. And these kids in my Spanish class were like, we can't take this test because the kid died. He sat in our row. It's really messing us up. And I don't know if that doesn't make them necessarily evil. I mean, it's really bad to say. But again, I think it's just because something is pushed in your face saying you're not invincible. You will die one day, even though you're 15 and you think you never will. So I do think that kids act out that way. So it works.
Sure. So what else happens? It's the final episode. The kids, they're hiding at the school, and now Mike does kiss Elle. No interruption.
Yeah.
Except they are interrupted afterwards when all the agents in the world arrive, and Elle messes them up real good. Blood pouring from their eyes and their ears.
Yeah, and this fully shows what you were talking about with them not being prepared for a superpowered kid that they know has superpowers, and just surround her real quick.
She'll not get out because of the human shields, which is essentially what happens. I mean, it does work, and it's clear they don't care about the lives of they're the bad guys. They don't care about the lives of people who work for them, other people. So yeah, they do fall, and then she gets drained, and they come in and grab her. But this is where I made that note of like, hey, snipers are a thing in the 80s too. Yeah. So get one.
One thing of note, I thought the whole luring the monster with blood, I thought that was a little thin. And they kind of explain it with Nancy looking in her encyclopedias at animals. And I mean, I get it, but that was just a little, because then, so what? Anyone that gets a cut somewhere, they're at risk of the monster coming through. But that's just more of a nitpick than anything else.
Yeah, they did show that, like, the map with how close all the things were to breaking through. So my thought was like, okay, I guess blood within this area will make it the barrier weaker between worlds or whatever. But as you say, they're in the school now. I don't know how far that is from the rest of the stuff, but it's worth thinking about. But since there was a lot of blood,
well, that one I buy. I just mean when Nancy and Jonathan cut their thumbs and then the monster comes. You know what I mean? The whole thing with the after Elle like blows all their heads like scanners or something, and there's pools of blood everywhere. I understand that. Okay. But it's more when they're like, hey, we'll lure the monster. Cut my thumb. I'll cut your thumb. And I don't know.
Well, I was thinking of the map, so that made more sense to me because they were in the house where already
close to it. Okay.
Yeah, already there's barriers breaking even without the blood. So that was my thoughts on it. But anyway, there's a shitload of blood, so the monster shows up at the school. It's drawn to it, and long story short, Elle defeats the monster but vanishes.
And they actually got me with the slingshot fake out. I hate to admit it, but because I really thought because the monster like opened its mouth wide and then he hit it, and I was like, at first I was like, oh, come on, really? And then Elle came and I was like, duh, I'm an idiot. They completely swerved me.
Wait, so did you mean that when he flew away, you thought that was the Rock when the monster flew away? I swear to God,
I was really thinking like, come on, did that slingshot do some shit? What's going on here right now?
I didn't think that, but I did think when it was opening its mouth, Zelda. Like, it's like every video game.
Yes.
You wait till it opens its mouth, and then it's like, no, of course it's L. Don't be silly.
And one thing, I was going to bring it up earlier, but now's the best time to bring it up. The only thing that did feel kind of shitty from the show, when it seemed to nail everything as far as like tone and look and music and style, is the CGI monster. I understand maybe it would have been more time consuming to do something a little different, but for being a throwback to times when everything was I feel a little bit more creative as far as monster design, this monster felt like out of Cloverfield or one of those samey monsters that you see nowadays in sci-fi and action movies.
I agree, and I made a note. There are moments when the monster, the monster, there are moments when it doesn't look amazing.
Yeah.
Mainly in this episode when it shows up a lot and is in bright lights, and you're like, oh, this is what it looks like? Doesn't look completely real. But I mean, I haven't done a lot of research into the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I think they did have, like, a monster puppet, at least, like a real live one that they used for some things.
Okay.
But I'm not. But I mean, just judging by how it looks.
Yeah,
even totally
I'm
right.
not even against them using CGI. I think more just the design of it.
Sure.
It just the old grayish green thing, and I mean, I guess its head's like a flower. It's not terrible, but I wish there was something a little bit more distinct. Maybe I don't know.
You're right. No, you're right. It does
Monday. Whatever the fuck. Who knows?
Absolutely. Monday night, for sure.
No, armchair quarterbacking over here.
Okay. It does stand out as not being completely on tone now that you mention it, with, like, even all the slime stuff is, like, it feels different from what the monster feels like in a way. Like, all the stuff you see in the dark world, it feels real on a different level, but I don't know what they should have done either.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I'm not saying I could do better or something, but I do like the L. I mean, they've been clearly the finish line was going to be L versus the monster. I mean, you know that from basically the second episode. But I like it because it's a good kind of callback to like Friday the 13th, the seventh one, I think, or the New Blood, because basically Jason fights a girl with telekinesis powers. So I'm all on board. I'm loving it.
Okay, cool. At the same time, we're in the Shadow World, and the Mother and Hopper find Will and manage to revive him into life. Mm-hmm. Did you think he was going to die, or what were your thoughts?
I kind of figured he would live, but it wouldn't have really thrown me if they had him die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they kind of see an alien type egg. It looked like when they're going through the upside down, like in the old Alien movies where it had those eggs that open from the top. They find something similar to that, and also when they find Will, he has a thing like down his throat, like some sort of
real
monster
far
thing.
down there. Yeah. But he gets back to life, and then it's the epilogue where everything seems back to normal for the kids, except Mike is missing Elle, and Nancy's back with Steve, and Hopper is leaving food in the forest for Elle, perhaps, and finally Will seems to have brought a little piece of the Upside Down back with him.
Yes, yeah, and I like how they with Hopper, because he also gets taken by. Well, not taken, but driven away by basically some of the evil corporation people. So you almost assume that they've noticed his skills, and maybe he's the new Matthew Modine or something, and he's kind of either protecting the town in some sort of deal, or they're working on something behind the scenes, and he's in the know. And yes, he's leaving things seemingly for Elle, because much like E.T. loved his Reese's Pieces, Elle loves Eggo waffles.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just because we think that's would be cool, and that's what we assume would happen. But yeah, obviously I had the same thoughts. He reluctantly gets into this car, like, ugh, and then later seems to be communicating in some way with Elle.
Yep.
And I mean that box was put there by someone. He's not just leaving it there for, like, in hopes of someone taking it, and it's not like he opened it and like, fuck, there's still food in here. Clearly something's going on, and I get that vibe as well. And I mean, I would not be against a season 2 where he's in another town investigating paranormal activities on his own and all the rest of the cast are new, something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Not that I think that's the best idea, but that certainly feels like a possibility.
Yeah, and well, they do. It's left there where, like I said, I probably would prefer more of an anthology, but there is more to say if they did want to go into what's going on with Will, and potentially the aftershocks of what's happened in this season, and especially if he's throwing up worms on the reg, and what was the other? Oh, and luckily Jonathan has got a new camera, so we can all rest easy knowing that Nancy gave him a gift of a replacement camera so he can go on taking his pictures out in the woods of kids partying from afar.
Yeah, and she can go on boning Steve. Which made sense to me.
Yeah, it did make sense. It's kind of pitched as almost like a twist, but I did like how they played that out. And one thing I think of note that I like what they did. They had the D&D game at the end, and they clearly talking about the show. It's not quite subtle where they're like, that's it. And it's like, it seems it's so quick. And they're like, well, it was 10 hours. So, they're talking about the show. And I feel like they bring up, what about the Lost Night? I feel like that's Hopper. What about the Proud Princess? I feel like that's Elle. And what about the flowers in the Dark Realm? I feel that's the eggs they saw. That's what I'm looking at it as.
That makes sense. I didn't make that complete connection, but I was just enjoying the moment of like, they're talking to me. The Duffers are here.
Yeah.
I sense them in the room. The lights are flashing.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But yeah, it was a nice touch, and also like a nice hint of like, well, sometimes there's more and stranger things.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of the Upside Down, this is a tiny, unimportant note, but did you think it was weird to see cars there? Because I kind of felt like it was weird to see cars in the Upside Down.
Yeah, I thought that, even just seeing the houses and stuff, I thought that was a little strange.
My thought was things in the real world, they're there. There's like emotional connections to them. There's people, and that leaves imprints or shadows in the Upside Down. But then, like, it's clearly not everything is reflected down there. So, and the cars, do they move when they're driven around? Or are these cars we see there, are they the cars that are usually there? Or how does that work?
Yeah, when I was watching it too, I started overthinking that in earlier episodes when I saw that things were like the same with certain things. I'm like, oh, is this some sort of weird potential future for the town? Is something going to happen? And probably overthinking it, just trying to like stay ahead of the story, but I don't know. I guess it was just to show that it's just like where we are, but different in the numerous different dimensions that exist on top of or below our own.
Yeah, and the Duffers did talk about this 30-page document they have with all the rules and backstory for how it actually works, and they mentioned how, well, maybe we'll get into that if there's a continuation. So
that's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's at least nice to... I mean, they could be lying to our faces.
Very true.
But if so, it's a good lie because it makes me think like, okay, well, I trust them to like... there was nothing that didn't make sense about it, and I'm fine with leaving it mysterious, but it's always nice to know that someone knows what they're doing behind the wheel.
Yeah, and even if they are lying, it felt like, at the very least, if they don't have a Bible on the rules, there was a lot of discussion on what's going on and what's happening with that other dimension and what it means.
Absolutely. So, as far as like the main criticism, quote unquote, we could throw at the show, I definitely agree that sometimes you sort of know what's going on anyway, but that's fine by me. For example, when Mike starts going, hey, when all this is over, you can come live with me. By the way, let's go to the big school dance. Immediately you think, well, she's not. That's clearly not happening because they're saying it. So, but that's just, I mean, it's weird when you're like sitting here like I can't like the reason it's predictable is that it's good writing in my opinion.
Yeah.
So and we're just too familiar with it. And if they did something else, it wouldn't be good writing. So I don't know. I mean, they could be more subtle about it or whatever. But this is not supposed to be the most subtle story ever. It's a big story, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And there's nothing wrong with if things are executed well and set up well. There's nothing wrong with at least having an idea of where things are going. Of course, you throw in your own twist on it or whatever it might be. But people say that about Game of Thrones, where I knew that was going to happen. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of knew it though because they've been telling you this the whole time that this is where things are going. It's not so much that they're hacks. It's just like you said, it's good storytelling. They're laying a foundation and they're building on top of it.
Yeah, you want things to be, it's like a balance between surprising and inevitable, because after you know the whole story, it should all feel like, yes, that's exactly what should have happened in this story, but you also want it to be surprising, and there's a certain trade-off you have to make. And when you're relying on all these so well-known stories and weaving something out of that, it's hard to be completely revolutionary. And if you try to do that, maybe you'll make Super 8s and you won't make Stranger Things, and that would be bad. So yeah,
I wanted to see more of. I like Matthew Modine. He played the Papa. I kind of wish for getting a fairly recognizable actor. I kind of wish there was a little bit more to him and to what was going on. I mean, you could read from the flashbacks. But maybe I just wanted a little bit more menace or something else there. It's just kind of like a minor nitpick, but
how did you? I mean, he did a lot of smiling behind glass.
Yeah, yeah,
so, and like, oh, good,
and just looking creepy with his bleached hair or whatever,
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any notes left, but I just remembered this. What did you think about having flashbacks from Hopper's past in the final episode? He started seeing his kid and all that. I was fine with it, but also felt a bit, not unnecessary, but like heavy-handed a little bit to be like, yeah, we already knew that he was doing it because of this, so did we need to see it? And if so, should we have seen it earlier? Or I mean, I'm just usually against flashbacks anyway, want as little as possible of all that. So I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I'm a sucker for it. I enjoy little character moments like that. Oh, I guess it wasn't little, but because I loved Lost, and I like when they do it on Orange Is the New Black. So
okay, well,
I do like seeing that, but it wasn't quite necessary.
No, this was a light snack compared to Lost or Orange Is the New Black. So
yeah.
The only reason I thought that was like because it was so little.
Well, especially because it was the finale. It was a weird choice because he was a main character, but he wasn't quite the main character. So you didn't. It was bizarre to have it with him. I mean, if they were doing something with Winona Ryder that shed some new light, or even Will or Elle or something, it would have made a bit more sense. It was just it only stood out to me because it was in the finale and it was giving us information we already knew.
And in the earlier episodes, there was a flashback with Winona Ryder and Will, and it really added to it because it sort of showed their casual affection for one another, and then her panic in the now. It's a real good contrast, and here it was sort of it was only done to heighten the moment where Will might die, so he's like, God damn you, wake up, because that's what it was for, kind of.
And maybe it was just the origin of him learning CPR. Like
if that's it, that would be fucking stupid. Looking at the doctors like, oh, you hit fire and then the breathe. Like,
you know what those doctors didn't do? They didn't do the dramatic punch, though. Like the old, like, don't you go, damn it.
That's the only part that works, as far as I've learned. I've learned everything from movies.
You might just start with that.
I learned CPR from movies and legal advice from rap music. Jay-Z has got me covered. I try that, get pulled over in Sweden, and you start spitting the 99 problems at them. It does not work.
Oh, it doesn't work?
Let me tell you. So
my trunk is locked and so's the dashboard or whatever, so you need a warrant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even rhyme in Swedish, so they're extra not impressed. And similar with the punching the chest, I would imagine. I mean, I'm looking forward to the day when I get to be the one who's, don't you go, damn it! Some stranger is falling down on the
Or
street
I just
tonight.
push, if I saw someone doing regular CPR, I'd just push them to the side and start just punching them with the ball of my fist. You're doing it wrong! Damn you! And I mean, I know we already kind of went over it, but what are your What would be your thoughts if you find out they're doing season 2, but here we are, it's the continuation, it's the search for L or whatever the fuck?
I would be. I would wait and see. As I waited and see with this show, I would expect them to find Elle in like 2 episodes in that case, and not have it be like again doing the same thing. You know, they would have to do something new, and I think I have confidence enough in them that they will, if they continue it. They know enough. I think it's more dangerous if they try to do something completely different and. I mean, not Stranger Things at all. If they get the next Wonder Woman reboot or whatever, that seems like a dangerous thing. But I have enough confidence in them. I think they could continue the story as well, because I wouldn't mind seeing these kids. An interesting thing would be if they were like a few years older and things have moved on. But of course, then you'd have to wait a few years. So, well, they'll be kids grow up fast, so they'll be a little older pretty quickly, and they can head into different themes and do whatever they like. I would enjoy that. What would you want to see in the next season?
I'm pretty torn. I probably would prefer to be more of an anthology with maybe some hints here and there at some of these characters. If it's, if the connection has to do with this company and the dimensions, and then maybe it ties into. Will somehow like later, but I mean I'd be excited either way. But yeah, I would probably prefer more of an anthology. And the kid that plays Mike is going to be in the movie of It, so good for him. He's and It, since like when It originally took place in the 80s, but then flashbacks were to the 50s. But now the new It takes place now, and it's flashback to the 80s. So good luck for this kid. He's got the market cornered on being a kid in the 80s.
Yeah, he's got the face for it, for sure, and the haircut.
Yeah.
But I think we both want an anthology, but that just means that we want something new, and we don't want them to take these characters and run them into the ground, which feels like a genuine thing that could happen.
Yeah.
But if they do something new with it, either way, I'll be happy.
But it's because it's similar to, say, like 24, where the first season's really good, and then all of a sudden it's season 4, and that Keith Sutherland, he's still got a crazy day ahead of him,
Yeah, true. I guess we'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts? Except I love this show, and I hope you've watched it, because if you didn't watch it and you listened to this, what's wrong with you? We told you. Yeah. I think you'll still enjoy it, because as we said, it's not about, to me, it's not about like, oh, where did he go? It's like he went to the dark place. We'll find out more about the dark place, but we know he basically is in a different, weird, upside down place. So I think you'll enjoy it either way. But great show.
I think it's better off just I mean, if you've listened this far and you haven't watched it, it's too late for you. But it's still worth seeing. But you're better off watching it unsullied. And I mean, I hope you don't think we're paid or something like that, because we're so positive on this show. But yes, there's nothing else really to say except I loved it, and I look forward to new stuff from the Duffer Brothers, especially their new plumbing company.
Absolutely. And we'll end on that. Thank you for listening. Go to showswhatyouknowshow.com and that's our website, and get all the latest TV news and the next upcoming episode, where we'll be talking about TV shows.
What are we talking about on the next episode?
Well, I conveniently didn't mention it because I'm not 100% certain, but I believe we'll be talking about season 1 of Mr. Robot.
Yes, yeah. Check the description. I'm sure it should be. And make sure you go to showswhatyouknow.com. And I know I said we're not paid, but and I promise we're not. But also, you could, if you feel like it, you can just go to StrangerThingsPodcast.com. It goes to the Shows What You Know page.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention that. I've gotten, like, we rolled the dice on that one and got StrangerThingsPodcast.com, And I feel like the dice are coming up our way.
Yeah, they are.
Because I want to talk about this more and forever, even though in a way it's less interesting because we're just so impressed and it's so nice.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, got some feedback on the old Outcast episode. People did not like my uppity attitude towards horror genres and
Oh, really?
the show.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd they say?
So they wanted me to shut up. They wanted me to shut my stupid face. And I think people tend to look up things where they talk about things they like, not things they hate. So I hope you enjoyed talking about Stranger Things we like.
And yes, drop us a line with your thoughts on Stranger Things or Outcast or Preacher at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. And make sure you subscribe on iTunes and please review the show and tell a friend.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Peace.